autumn in Northmoor always arrives earlier than anywhere else. No one knows why. The locals just say that when the first leaf falls on the trail leading into the forest, it means the old spirits have begun to return. This morning, the fog was so thick that people couldn't see the other end of the street. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves mingled together, seeping through every crack, every misted window. The church bell rang 3 short times, as if announcing that something was about to happen. In the small cafe at the edge of town, the old lady who owned the place was wiping cups, her eyes absent-mindedly drifting toward the fogged-up window. A stranger stepped inside, long coat, boots still muddy from the forest. He said nothing, just pulled out a chair and sat down in the dim corner. The woman glanced at him and softly asked, "Did you just come through the forest? Not many dare to go in these days." The man only nodded. He placed a soaked old leather notebook on the table. The ink on the cover had run into dark streaks like dried blood. Outside, the wind began to rise. Golden leaves spun in the air and clattered against the glass. Something or someone was walking down the road, slow and heavy. The young waitress shivered. She pulled the curtains closed, but through a small gap, she still saw a shadow moving through the mist, gliding as if it never touched the ground. "Ma'am, do you hear someone calling?" The old woman replied, her voice trembling. "That's not a person, dear. When the wind changes direction, don't listen to anything." The man in the corner looked up. In the dim light, his eyes were as pale as ashes. He opened the notebook. The pages clung together, covered in brown ink scrawls. On the first page, there was only one line. "When autumn comes, they walk through the fog again." Northmoor was once a land of settlers. They buried their dead on the high hills, where the wind blew all year round. The elders said that when the air turned cold, people would hear footsteps on their rooftops. Not rats, not cats, but them, the ones who never left. The man took a sip of cold tea, then murmured, "I saw them, at the edge of the woods. 3 figures, walking in a line. No one spoke. They just looked at me, then vanished when the fog thickened." The old woman froze, her hands midair. A drop of coffee fell, echoing in the long silence. Outside, the church bell tolled again, this time 4 times. No one in the cafe said a word, but everyone knew. The 4th toll only rang when someone in town had died. Dusk fell. The sun sank slowly behind the hills, leaving a streak of blood-red light. The wind grew stronger, carrying a distant sound, half whisper, half cry. The waitress looked out the window again. In the glass, she saw a reflection, not her own. A pale face, hollow eyes, and a faint smile blurred by mist. She stumbled back, trembling. "Ma'am, someone's at the door." The old woman turned, but the doorway was empty. Only the wind swept through the hall, bringing with it the old scent of dried lavender, the kind people used to scatter on graves to ward off spirits. The man still sat there. He turned another page. A small note fell out, a map of the forest, with a scribbled line below. "On the 3rd night of October, they will return. The door will open." As night descended, the entire town of Northmoor seemed to hold its breath. The streetlights flickered, then went out. Somewhere, a knocking sounded, 3 times, and then silence. No one dared to check. The man closed his notebook, stood up, and left a few rain-soaked coins on the table. Before walking out, he said softly, "If the wind blows from the forest, don't open the door, no matter who knocks." He vanished into the fog, leaving behind the echo of the church bell and the faint scent of lavender in the air. The old woman watched, trembling, as she pulled the curtain shut. Outside, a single leaf fell onto the window pane, and on it, clearly, was the mark of a hand. Northmoor entered its 13th autumn since that night, and since then, no one has counted the falling leaves anymore. Because they know, when the first leaf touches the ground, those who dwell in the mist begin to return. The first story in that old notebook was titled "The Knocker at the End of the Road." No one knew who wrote it, only that the handwriting trembled as if penned by someone close to death. That night, Northmoor was colder than usual. The full moon hung low over the trees, pale and heavy, as if it might fall at any moment. Along the dirt path leading to the last house in town, a faint light flickered, the home of Mrs. Evelyn Marsh. Evelyn had lived alone for more than 20 years, ever since her husband, Thomas Marsh, vanished in the forest on an October night. His body was never found, only a pocket watch engraved with the initials TM, discovered near the forest edge, smeared with mud and dead leaves. Since then, she had never left the house. Every night, she lit 2 candles by the window, as if to guide someone home. That night, the wind howled through the pines, clawing at the old roof. Inside, Evelyn sat by a wooden table, the oil lamp flickering over her wrinkled face. On the table lay an unsent letter, its words shaky and uneven. "Thomas, I'm still waiting for you. If you can hear me, knock on the door, just once, so I'll know you're still there." Outside, the clock struck 12. Midnight had begun. A single knock echoed, soft but clear in the silent air. Evelyn looked up, her heart pounding. She stared at the door. No one there. The wind still howled, the leaves still rustled, but that sound, it wasn't the wind. She rose slowly, her footsteps creaking on the wooden floor. When her hand reached the doorknob, the knocking came again, 3 times, steady and heavy. Knock, knock, knock. Evelyn stepped back, trembling. Her voice rasped. "Thomas, is that you?" No answer. Only the wind slipped through the cracks, carrying the scent of damp earth and dying candles. She gathered her courage and opened the door a crack. Only fog. No one stood there, but on the doorstep, she saw a wet footprint pressed into the cold stone. Large, heavy, pointing inward. She stumbled back and slammed the door shut. It shuddered violently, as if struck from the other side. Knock! Knock! The pounding grew frantic, furious, as though something was trying to break in. The oil lamp went out, plunging the room into thick darkness. Evelyn screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the wind's roar. When neighbors arrived the next morning, the door was still locked. No one answered. They had to break it open. The house was empty, furniture overturned, curtains swaying, and on the floor by the door, wet footprints leading into the living room and vanishing into thin air. On the table, they found the unfinished letter, and beneath it, another sheet, not written by her. The shaky words read, "I knocked. Why didn't you open?" The police ruled her disappearance unexplained. But locals claimed that every October night at midnight, they still heard 3 knocks echoing from the abandoned house at the end of the road. And if anyone was foolish enough to go near, they said they could hear a hoarse woman's voice whispering in the wind. "Thomas, is that you?" Years later, a man named Martin Hale, a collector of strange tales, came to Northmoor to investigate. He arrived on the night of October 3rd, carrying a recorder and an oil lamp. In his journal, he wrote, "It's too quiet here. Far too quiet. Feels like the forest is listening to my every breath. The wind stopped the moment I reached the door. A smell, something like dried lavender, brushed past me. Then I heard the knocking. 3 times, just as they said." He wrote that for some reason his hand moved on its own toward the doorknob. When he touched it, the metal was freezing, like ice left in the snow. Then a voice whispered right beside his ear, "You've come home, Thomas." He spun around. No one there. But when he played back the recording, he clearly heard the same woman's voice continue. "You shouldn't have knocked, Martin. Not everyone wants the door opened." The tape ended with a loud thud and the sound of metal hitting the floor. When they found the recorder later, Martin was gone. Only the tape remained, and beside it, a pocket watch engraved with TM. From that night on, no one dared approach the house. The authorities sealed off the area, but locals still claim to see a faint oil lamp flicker in the window and hear 3 knocks echo every night. Curious children once ventured close and swore they saw 2 figures standing side by side on the doorstep, a man and a woman, before both faded into the mist when the church bell tolled. The story ended there, the ink smeared as if soaked in water. The last line in Martin Hale's original notes was only half legible. "If you hear knocking on an October night, don't." The rest was torn away. When the man in the Northmoor cafe finished reading this part, the wind outside rose again. The notebook trembled, and the lamp flickered as if about to go out. He paused, muttering, "The first story, but it's only the beginning. There are still 2 more, and they haven't found peace." The cafe owner clutched her rosary tightly, whispering as if afraid to hear her own words. "Don't go on. The wind's from the forest tonight." But the man turned the page anyway, where the paper had yellowed, and the next lines seemed hastily written, shaky, desperate, as if by someone recording what they saw in the grip of terror. And that was the second story. The second page of the old notebook began with a short line. "Not all souls find their way home." Below it, the handwriting changed, shakier, trembling, as if written by a frightened hand. The story was called The Photograph in the Stone House. The stone house stood on the northern edge of Northmoor, where a dried river cut through the town's old graveyard. Locals called the place Stone Hill because the entire hill was paved with cold gray-blue stones. No one lived there anymore, at least no one alive. But in 1978, a young family, Lucas and Miriam Porter, with their 6-year-old daughter Elise, moved in. They had come from the city, seeking peace away from the noise. The real estate agent had lied, saying the house was merely a bit old, that the damp weather caused the walls to discolor. No one mentioned the photographs that covered the upstairs hallway. It was their first night there. As Miriam climbed the stairs, she noticed the narrow corridor lined with dusty old picture frames. Inside each frame was a black and white photo. The people in them all stood in the same spot, on the porch, beneath a withered elm, but their faces were different. Elise looked up and asked, "Mom, why is everyone standing there and no one's smiling?" Miriam forced a smile. "They're just old pictures, sweetheart. Don't worry about it." But when she looked closer, the woman in the last photograph at the end of the hall looked eerily familiar. The cheekbones, the eyes, the posture. It was her, Miriam Porter. Night fell. The wind rose from the river, carrying dampness and the scent of old moss. Lucas had fallen asleep. Miriam lay awake, feeling as if someone was walking slowly upstairs. The footsteps were heavy, dragging, like shoes soaked in water. She got up, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the hallway. Elise's door was slightly ajar. Inside, the child was talking to someone. "No, I don't know them, but my mom looks just like you." "Yes, I promise I won't tell." Miriam pushed the door open. Elise jumped, glancing around. No one was there. Only the curtain swayed gently in the wind. "Who were you talking to?" Miriam asked. Elise replied, "The lady in the last photo, Mom. She said she used to live here, before she was buried by the river." Miriam froze. She went downstairs to calm herself, but as she reached the staircase, the light flickered. The last photograph, the one with the woman who looked like her, was missing its glass frame, and the picture itself was empty. The woman was gone. The next day, Miriam told Lucas what happened. He laughed, saying she was just exhausted from the move. "If there's a ghost," he joked, "maybe they just want a family portrait." But that night, Lucas himself heard the faint click of a camera in the hallway, though there was no camera in the house. The next morning, a new photo had appeared on the wall. It showed Lucas sleeping, his mouth slightly open, as if someone had taken the picture from beside the bed. From that day on, the house felt heavier. The air grew thick and damp, and the faint scent of dried lavender, the kind once used to purify restless souls, lingered everywhere. Miriam tried to burn the photos, but each time the ashes cooled, the frames reappeared, pristine, hanging on the walls again. Elise spoke less and less. She spent hours sitting under the dead elm outside, talking softly to someone unseen. One afternoon, when Miriam called her in, she heard Elise singing faintly. The lady in the picture said, "When Mommy looks into the frame, she'll stay there forever." 3 days later, Lucas disappeared. Police found his footprints circling the riverbank, ending right at the water's edge. No body, only a single wet photograph floating among the weeds, showing him standing with his back to the river. They said he slipped and fell. Miriam didn't believe it. She locked herself inside the house, sketching hundreds of faces from the photos, trying to understand. But the more she drew, the more those faces looked like her own. The final entry in the notebook was from Miriam. The writing was rushed, uneven. "I saw them tonight, all of them. They fill the hallway. They wear my face, Elise's face, and Lucas's. The picture on the wall is changing. I see myself inside it. They're calling me into the frame." The ink smeared, and the words stopped midway. A week later, police came to check the house. It was empty. The door was open, the lights off, dinner still half-eaten. Elise was gone. Upstairs, they counted 13 new photographs, clear, modern, free of dust. The last one showed the three of them, Lucas, Miriam, and Elise, standing on the porch, smiling. Everyone in town swore that no matter where you stood, their eyes followed you. After that, Stonehill was abandoned. The path was fenced off, but travelers said that on moonlit nights, they still saw flashes of light from the second-floor window. A few daring youths brought cameras inside. When they returned, every photo was blank, except one, a picture of themselves standing in the room, though none had pressed the shutter. A week later, They left Northmoor without a word. The house fell silent again, its crooked frames hanging on the walls. And in one, faintly visible in the corner, was the shadow of a little girl drawing. The man in the cafe closed the notebook, his hands trembling. No one spoke. Outside, the fog had swallowed the last of the light. He whispered, "Stonehill, the place where no one leaves without leaving their reflection behind." The cafe owner looked toward the window and sighed. "If your picture is taken by the hand of the dead," she said softly, "you'll never grow old." The church bell tolled again, twice this time, long and heavy, as if rising from beneath the earth. The man opened the notebook once more and looked at the next page. The first line was blurred but still legible. Story 3, The One Who Saw Himself. And he began to read on. The next page of the notebook was yellowed, the writing crooked, the ink smudged as if soaked by rain. Along the edge was a tear mark, as though someone had tried to rip it out and stopped halfway. The first line, written in a trembling hand, read, "If one day you see yourself standing on the other side of the mirror, turn away before it smiles." The story told of Thomas Vale, the last lighthouse keeper on the eastern coast of Northmoor. Since 1952, no one had lived in that region after the wreck of the ship Mary Wren, a vessel swallowed by the fog less than a mile from shore. When the ship vanished, 3 bodies were found drifting, and 1 man remained missing, the chief sailor, Edward Lorne. Thomas was not a superstitious man, but ever since that night, whenever the fog thickened, the lighthouse light would turn on by itself before he even touched the switch. At first, he blamed the wind, the rust. But then, other things began to appear. One evening in early October, Thomas saw his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Only, it didn't move with him. When he raised his hand, it stayed still. When he bent down to wash his face, the figure in the glass continued to stare straight ahead, eyes hollow, unblinking. He turned off the light. But in the darkness, the faint reflection still glowed, as if the mirror itself was shining. The next day, he told the coastal officer. The man only laughed. "Old lighthouses have their tricks. Don't let the sea fog fool you." But that night, at 3 o'clock, footsteps echoed up the iron stairs. There was only one way up, to where Thomas stood. He turned, flashlight aimed downward. No one. Only the damp trail of handprints glistening on the railing. Then came the soft sound of breathing, right behind him. When he turned, the mirror by the door cast back a face, his own, but with eyes black and bottomless. From then on, each night, the mirror appeared sooner, clearer. Sometimes he saw himself doing other things, standing by the railing when he was sitting, smiling when he wasn't, or waving, beckoning him closer. Thomas began to record everything, hoping for logic. In one entry, he wrote, "The reflection is not me, it's something learning to become me." One stormy night, lightning tore open the sky, and he saw 2 figures outside the lighthouse glass. One wearing an old sailor's coat soaked with seawater, and one identical to himself, except that its mouth moved silently. Thomas tried to open the door, but the wind pressed it shut. In the lightning flash, he saw that beyond the door there was no platform, no railing, only the sea, yawning wide, and the other man stepped backward into the void, smiling. When the light faded, both were gone. The next morning, wet footprints led from the door to the mirror. Inside the glass, faintly, was the image of a man standing in the rain. Not a reflection of now, but of a moment long trapped. Thomas began locking the room, covering every mirror in the lighthouse with cloth. But one night, awakened by dripping water, he saw the fabric pulled away. The mirror gleamed again, reflecting the room, and within the frame, a pair of eyes was opening from the inside. He tried to smash it. The shards scattered, light breaking into hundreds of tiny flames. But in each fragment, he saw hundreds of versions of himself, all smiling. And through the sound of waves, a deep, distant voice spoke, "You've seen me, which means the door is open." The next day, the storm was gone. The lighthouse still shone, though no one had lit it. They found Thomas Vale sitting against the wall, eyes wide, his face calm as if asleep. In front of him stood a mirror, perfectly intact, though he had shattered it the night before. In its reflection, a man still stood, turned away from the living world. After the tale spread, many visited the lighthouse. They said that at night, even when covered, the mirror glowed through the cloth, shimmering like water. Some claimed their reflections lagged half a second behind, as if the image were trying to catch up to reality. An old sailor said a line still whispered around Northmoor. Not every mirror shows the truth. Some reflect only those the sea has kept. The man in the tavern closed the notebook. His voice was low, gravelly. They say that lighthouse still lights up whenever the fog rolls in. But the light isn't to guide. It's to mark where the line between the living and the dead has opened. No one spoke. Outside, the fog was thick enough to swallow the trees. In the silence, a steady dripping echoed somewhere, like the heartbeat of a lost soul. He turned to the next page. The paper was thicker, the handwriting neater, colder. The first line written in red ink read, "The final story, when the night calls its own name." The last page of the notebook was heavier and thicker than the rest. The ink darkened as if written in dried blood. The paper's edge was scorched, carrying a faint burnt smell. At the top of the page, a single crooked line read, "Do not read if you still hear the bell." The man in the tavern was silent for a long time. Outside, the fog was so thick it was impossible to tell sky from earth. The room was lit only by the flicker of a weak yellow lamp reflected in an empty glass of wine. He took a deep breath and opened the final page. The handwriting was different from all before, even, cold, utterly devoid of emotion. The first line read, "They do not know that every story is the same." The narrator spoke in the first person. He wrote that he had once been a recorder, someone hired to collect rumors, strange tales, and ghost stories around Northmoor. He began in a small riverside village where they said old souls return when the first leaf falls. From there, he went to Stonehill, then to the lighthouse on the eastern shore. And everywhere, he found the same patterns. Someone standing just beyond sight, footsteps stopping after 3 beats, and every mirror or photograph reflecting someone identical to him, but smiling. At first, I thought I was haunted by the stories I transcribed. But then I realized they weren't written by me. They were writing me. He wrote that the more he recorded, the more the pages changed color. The ink bled into faces, into symbols belonging to no human language. One night, when he set the pen down, his hand no longer moved by will. It wrote slowly, deliberately. The story does not end until you become part of it. From then on, he never left Northmoor. He wandered everywhere. The stone house, the riverbank, the lighthouse, the old church, seeking answers. But the farther he went, the more everything looked the same. The same damp smell, the same wind, the same shadow walking ahead of his lantern. One night, in the abandoned church deep in the woods, he heard someone reading passages from his own notebook. The voice was low, hoarse, almost a whisper. He entered, his oil lamp flickering, and saw a man in a dark cloak sitting with his back turned. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am only the one who wrote before you." The voice replied. The man turned around. His face was identical, except for the eyes. There were none, only 2 deep, black hollows reflecting the faint lamplight like still water. Every storyteller believes he's breaking the curse, but really he's just continuing it. Then the figure dissolved into smoke and drifted into the open page on the altar. From that moment, he began hearing the bell, distant, steady, ringing 3 times. At first, it came in dreams, later, in daylight. The townsfolk said no church in Northmoor had rung for 30 years. So whose bell was it? I think I understand now. Every forgotten soul here, the one trapped in the photograph, the one lost in the fog, the reflection in the glass, is a fragment of a story that never ends. Each generation, one person will write it again to keep them alive. And I am simply the last one holding the pen. As he wrote that line, the notebook trembled. The candle went out. In the darkness, pages turned, but not by his hand. Someone else was writing. He lifted the lamp. On the new page, a fresh line appeared. "If you have read this far, it means the night has already called your name." The story ended there. The man in the tavern froze at that line. Outside, the bell rang 3 times. No one spoke. The air felt colder. A customer whispered, "Who really wrote that notebook?" The man looked up, smiled faintly. They say it always finds the next person who knows how to read. The tavern fell silent. The oil lamp flickered, then went out. In that instant, through the misted window, someone swore they saw a figure standing in the fog, holding a black notebook, red letters glowing faintly through the cover, smiling, exactly like the storyteller. The next morning, the Northmoor Tavern opened late. The man from the night before was gone. Only an old notebook remained on the table, with a new line written in a different hand. I am the one who tells it again. Years later, people said that in autumn, when the fog blankets Northmoor, someone will knock on a door seeking shelter, carrying an old notebook. They'll sit, open it, and retell the old stories, exactly as before. When the bell rings 3 times, the storyteller disappears, leaving the notebook for the next listener. No one remembers what they looked like. Only that, in the mist, a low, steady voice can still be heard whispering, "Every story is one, and the night is not over yet." The end. The Northmoor Records. Tonight's story ends here. If you have a real horror story, send it to Dark Whispers Audio. Let's share the fear together. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next whisper might come sooner than you think.